Isaiah. And believe it or not, I have quite a few Jewish listeners that have responded to the program. And I'm not talking about Messianic Jews. I'm talking about Orthodox Jews. And you see, they can't comprehend this either. They just cannot see that Christ was the God of the Old Testament. They can't comprehend the Trinity. They refuse the Trinity. And of course, they use the verse in Deuteronomy where Moses writes, "Our God is one." Well, absolutely He's one. But we know from all the rest of Scripture that He is in three persons. Now, I can't understand that. You can't understand it. They can't understand it. So what do? We take it by faith, because that's what this book says. And this is what God is looking for, is our faith. He expects us to believe what He has said, and we're not to argue with it. And you know, I always like to use the illustration. I don't care who you are. If you know something, and you know it, and someone comes along and says, "Well, I don't believe it," how do you feel? Well, they're calling you a liar. Nobody likes to be called a liar, especially when you know you're not. Well, you see, that's what we do to God. Any time that a man says, "I can't believe what this book says," he's calling God a liar. And this is why God has made it so plain that it's impossible to please Him without faith. We have to believe what He has said, or we can't please God. I don't care if you give $1 million a week. I don't care if you go visit the sick every night. I don't care if you go to the worst mission field in this world. It won't do you a nickel's worth of good if you're going to do it outside of the realms of faith. We have to take God at His word. All right, so back in Isaiah chapter 9. Did I even give you the chapter? I don't believe I did. I just said Isaiah. All right, Isaiah chapter 9. Now, honey, we're going to go down to verse 7. Get the camera on this one. Isaiah chapter 9, 6 and 7. Now start verse 6. Now this is Old Testament. "For unto us a child is born." Now whenever we look at Isaiah and some of these Old Testament prophets, who are the pronouns? Well, the nation of Israel. They didn't write to Gentiles. Isaiah wasn't writing to the Egyptians or the Babylonians. He's writing to Israel. And so to the nation of Israel he says, "For unto us, the nation of Israel, a child is born, and unto us a son is," what's that next word? "Given." Oh, now flash in your mind to John 3:16. What does it say? "For God so loved the world that He" what? "He gave His only begotten Son." Here it is. How did God give His Son? When He was born in Bethlehem. All right, read on. "And the government shall be upon His shoulder." In other words, that kingdom on earth that He was talking about in His earthly ministry, that all of Old Testament prophecy is looking forward to, that there's going to be a King of Kings and a Lord of Lords who's not only going to rule Israel, but the whole world. And it's going to be perfect. There's going to be no sin, no corruption, no rotten politics. And His government is going to rest upon the shoulder of this person that Isaiah is talking about. All right, read on. "And His name shall be called," and they're all capitalized, "Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty," what? "God." See? "The Everlasting," what? "Father." "The Prince of Peace." Now everybody knows who's the Prince of Peace, don't they? That was Christ. But do they know that He's also God, the Father? A lot of them don't. But see how this verse ties it all together? And then you come on down to the next one, "With the increase of His government and peace, there shall be no end upon the throne of David." Now I pointed out in one of the classes the other night, and I've done it here on television. I know I have. You go into Matthew's Gospel, the very first verse. It throws you only way back to Abraham, not to Adam, but only back to Abraham. Why? Because see, Matthew is the one of the Gospels that presents Christ as the King. And this whole concept of a coming king comes out of the Abrahamic covenant. Not out of something that God promised to Adam, but what He promised to Abraham. And so that genealogy that comes out then in Matthew chapter 1 only goes back to Abraham, because he's presenting the king, the one who's going to rule and reign, not only the nation of Israel, but the whole world. Then you get into the other genealogy in Luke's Gospel chapter 3, That genealogy goes how far back? To Adam. Because you see, Luke is presenting Christ not as the king, but as the what? The Son of Man. And so consequently, he is tied to Adam, the first man. And then Paul refers to Christ as the second Adam. So you see how beautifully, again, all the Scripture fits. All right, so here we have in Isaiah then that Christ was indeed God. He's God the Father. He's God the Son. And we can show you another one. We're going to be going back there in just a minute anyway. Let's go to John's Gospel now. John's Gospel, and the next statement from the cross is going to come in chapter 19. But on your way to chapter 19, just stop at 14 again for a moment. Now I'm going to get myself confused if I'm not careful. But anyway, John 14, you all know